computer.
Uh,
Okay.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. Um, I thought I'd just give a brief introduction to myself for those of you who don't know me. Uh, Janet did give me a bit of an introduction last week. Um, I had a degree in wildlife biology way back in the last century, but I never worked in it, but it's always been a hobby. I've been involved in all three breeding bird atlases um, to date. I don't know if I'll be around for the next one or not. It won't be for another, won't start for another 15 years or so. But I've always been interested in birds, but I'm interested in all kinds of natural history. I always say about myself, I make a lousy specialist. My interests are quite broad. Some of my kids got me into, one got me into butterflies, another one got me into dragonflies, and one thing and another. Um, so I'm going to get right into it. I want to cover 15 species tonight. We'll see how that goes. Um, I'm really not too sure how long it'll take to do this. If I have time, if I have find out I'm not using very much time, I'll just go on to what I was going to talk about next week. But we'll fill the time up, don't worry. As far as questions, I'm open to questions. I would suggest that you only ask questions during the presentation that are connected with what we're looking at here. If you have more general questions, leave those for the end, and we'll try to answer them. But just to, in the interests of time and focus, if we could just, while we're presenting, um, just ask questions related to what we're talking about in the presentation. And well, there should be some time for questions at the end. There will be a quiz at the end, just a fun quiz. Don't worry, you're not going to be marked because I won't have any clue what your answers were. Um, so let's get into it. For tonight, I'm mostly going to be looking at birds, well, entirely looking at birds that are found in areas around houses, in suburbs, or around farmyards, or in open fields. Just more man-modified habitats. And so the first one I've got here, I hope you can all see my screen. I'm sharing it, so it should be visible to you. Um, this is a killdeer. It's the only plover that we have that nests in man-modified habitats. This is a bird that used to be much commoner than it is now, but it's still fairly easy to find. Very noisy. Let's just play a tape. If you need me to play things louder, just let me know. So
That
that
was
was sort of
good,
the,
Ken. That was
sorry,
good. That
it
was
sounds
good.
coming good.
Yep.
Okay, good. That was some of that was the killdeer call, the two-noted call. We'll play it again. And the call that the bird is named for. It's the two-syllable call, but they have lots of other calls. Um, that's an alarm call you hear when you're near chicks or a nest. You can hear the frantic quality in that one. More alarm calls. I'm using it's an online program that you can access. It's free. It's called Dendroica. Um, and so it's interesting because it gives you here the origin of the sound. So this killdeer that we were just listening to was recorded by Monty Brigham, who used to be connected with the OFNC back in 1976 at Shirley's Bay. So that's kind of fun to see that. Then there's also different pictures you can look at. You can Anyway, killdeer is an easy bird to recognize if you see it. It's the only plover that has two bands on the chest, two black bands on the white chest here. The little semi-palmated plovers that we see pretty often in migration only have one band, and they're about half the size. Killdeers are quite large. Red in the tail, and I don't know whether they have one in flight. I'll just take a quick look here. No, probably there might be, but I won't be able to find it quickly. Oh, there's a nest. Um, we used to find them like when I was a boy, our church parking lot always had killdeer's nest in it. And we used to find them in farmers' fields and that where there was a bit of gravel. So very well camouflaged. Usually they're in a more gravelly place than this. And this one's built more of a nest than they often do. All these little bits of twig, the bird has brought those to make the nest. But typical shorebird nests, shorebirds nearly always have four eggs because they're quite large eggs in comparison to the bird, and they have to fit under the incubating bird. The next one, got to hit select here. Mourning dove, very common still, doing quite well, quite comfortable in man-modified habitats. But we live in the woods here, and we also have them nesting in our woods. So they can nest almost anywhere. They do have to, I was going to say they have to have trees for nesting. That's not true. Around here, they always nest in trees pretty much. But when you get into more open areas towards the prairies, they will nest on the ground. Um, so the call is very distinctive. People who are just learning bird calls often think they're hearing an owl. I'll play another one. The chattery notes in there were European starling, but we're going to come to starling a little later in the program tonight. Um, as far as identifying the bird, they're a very typical sort of a pigeon shape, but they have a long pointed tail. And you'll see these black markings on the wing and a little black marking on the side of the face
And
here.
then the hawk has left the remains.
Yeah. Just remember if you're having a sidebar conversation to mute yourself.
Excuse me, Ken.
Yeah, sure.
Going back to the killdeer, and maybe for all these species you're going to cover, where would be a good place for us to look for one now?
Okay, sure. Good question. I'll try to remember to do that. So, killdeer, let's go back there. So killdeers are they're an open habitat species. And for nesting in the spring, they nest in early May, almost as soon as they're back. And because there's more open then, they'll nest in places that might grow up into grass later, but they have to have quite open areas. So gravel roads sometimes, areas of gravel on a parking lot, or in stubbly fields that haven't been plowed or aren't being plowed. So they need quite open. Unlike most shorebirds, they don't have to have water for breeding. They're usually not that close to water, although they do go to water, especially in migration.
Yeah, we see a lot here at Richmond Conservation Area.
Yes.
The lagoons, yeah.
Yeah, that would be a good spot. Yeah. I used to find nests on the gravel road going into the Russell lagoons. I don't know if they still nest there. I haven't been there for years. Let's go to our mourning dove and we'll talk about him. So mourning doves, as I say, they can be found almost anywhere there's trees, backyards. They'll often sing right on top of houses and that. So she walks from along roadsides, sitting in trees, sitting along wires. Um, let's pull up another picture or two and just see. Yeah. So they'll come to feeders. Every day we have some at our feeders, sometimes up to 25 or 30 at a time. So, so that the call is what gives them the name mourning dove because the call sounds sad, like they're sad about something. Um, and as I say, they're sometimes mistaken for an owl. There's one other thing I wanted to play here. That's the noise. That's the noise of the wings when they're taking off. They've got a sort of a whistle in their wings. It's very distinctive. If you hear that, it's a mourning dove. So you can listen for the call, which is very distinctive. The wing noise is also very distinctive. I'll play that one again. We hear that one a lot here when they're flying around the feeder and that. They don't always make the whistle when they're flying. It's mostly when they're taking off. So I assume it's kind of a way of them notifying the other doves that they're flying because they tend to be in groups. Once they get into breeding season, they're still often seen in pairs. All good so far with those two? Oh, sorry, Sam Bath. Did you have a question? I see your
Yeah,
hand.
uh, I see a lot of them in my backyard, but mostly they're by themselves.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess it depends. If it's, I often, as they say, we often see numbers of them here, especially in the off season when they aren't breeding. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, but they're frequent visitors.
Yeah. Good. Let's go on to the next one. Chimney swift. This is one that has really plummeted in numbers during my lifetime. When I was a boy, living in small town southern Ontario, you would always hear these flying over, and most houses still had a brick chimney that they would nest in. Um, they're not nearly as common now. All the birds that like the swallows and the swifts and the nighthawks and whippoorwills, all those birds that catch insects on the wing they've gone way down in numbers. I've never heard a really good explanation why, but I think part of it is there aren't as many insects as there used to be, especially in the built-up areas where the chimney swifts used to be the happiest. Um, but I live out in Lanark County, and in Lanark County, most of the towns have chimney swifts still. Elmont has them, Carlton Place has them, Pakenham has them, Lanark Village has them. So they're still doing okay in the smaller towns. Sam Bass was telling me earlier that he's seen them around where he lives. Um, so where they are, you can still have them, but there's many places where you don't see them anymore. I know by the time I moved away from Kanata in 2012, I hadn't heard one over our place in Kanata for many years. So probably a combination of loss of habitat with moving to smaller chimneys. I mean, most people have a gas furnace now. They don't need a big brick chimney. So, and then also there's fewer insects in towns. I would say we don't have that many insects out here. My wife would argue with me because she thinks we have too many still. But this is a chimney swift at a nest. They don't make much of a nest, just a few twigs, and the twigs are glued together and glued to the wall with their own saliva. It's sticky and it forms a glue that dries and is quite hard. That's a flock of them flying over. Yeah. Very distinctive. Just going to see if they have one in flight. Oh, there's eggs in a nest. No, I don't think they have a. No, none in flight. Oh, there, yeah, this one's in flight. So this is what they look like in flight. And I think it was Roger Torrey Peterson that described them as cigars with wings. So a very cylindrical body, very streamlined, and the wings are very stiff. You'll notice that the first, like the sort of forearm part of the wing here is very short, something like a hummingbird. The swifts and hummingbirds are kind of in related orders as birds. And so so the wings do a lot of their movement sort of from the shoulder. And so it's a very fluttery flight, very distinctive. But listen for the call. I'll play it one more time before we move on. Cardinal in there too. So that's the chimney swift. You do see them, I know, around Britannia. They're there with the swallows catching insects over the pond, usually just about treetop height, sometimes a little lower, catching insects. Just for interest, I'm doing these in sort of a taxonomic order. So we're coming now to a couple of birds that are in the flycatcher family. And this is Eastern Phoebe is the first one. Another bird that's named for its call, for its song. So it says its name, Phoebe, Phoebe. I'll play another one. This one was recorded in Aylmer, just across the river. So these are quite common. They like structures. So on our property, they always nest under our deck. They like to nest on windowsills or under ledges, somewhere where they're kind of sheltered from the weather, but on something quite solid. You can still find them nesting on rock faces, which is where they nested before we built houses. And the really distinctive thing about the Phoebe, you can tell immediately it's a flycatcher. Just the way they sit very, very erect, and they'll sit and then they'll fly out and grab an insect and then fly back off into the same perch to kill it and eat it. But the one thing Phoebes are very distinctive for is they're always wagging their tails. So always, the tail's always going like this. So that's the most distinctive field mark for Phoebes. Very dark head, but a whitish throat and chest. Might have a picture. Oh, that's a call they do. Killdeer in the background. So that's a call. The other thing is a song. I should talk a bit about songs and calls. I think Janet mentioned it last week, but just remember, songs are related to advertising. So they're either trying to attract a mate if they don't have one yet, and then even once they have a mate and before, they're setting up a territory. So songs are to attract females and give notice to other males on territories around. Hey, this territory is occupied. If you crowd too close, you and I are going to have a problem. Calls are more a lot. There's alarm calls like we heard from the chickadees, and so those are to let other members of the same species mostly know that there's a problem, there's a threat. So they'll do alarm calls. There's also various contact calls, um, and they'll so most birds, if you ever listen to the chickadees at your feeder, the chickadee dee dee call, that's a call. We're going to be talking about chickadees next week, and we'll talk about their various vocalizations. But they have many other calls, and they all mean something to chickadees, although I'm not sure what they all mean. But so the phoebe is their song, so that's territorial or to attract a mate, and that little this call. I don't know what that one's for, actually. It might be an alarm call. We hear it quite often around the nest site, so I think it might be mostly an alarm call. So phoebes are often associated with buildings. Um, they're also often found around water. So cottages and that, they love those. They used to nest in, I think they still do, nest in barns quite often. Barns are good because there's lots of insects around barns. They eat in the summer, they eat nearly completely, mostly insects. I think they will eat a few fruits in the fall and in winter. They're one flycatcher that doesn't migrate very far. They winter in the southeastern United States. Most of our other flycatchers leave the continent and go to Central or South America. How am I doing? Oh, we're doing okay. Um, let's go to so that's one member of the flycatcher family. And here's another one. So this is eastern kingbird, quite common, maybe not as common as they used to be. It's still pretty common. And you'll often see you'll often see them feeding fairly low, like they'll sit on fences or wires, hydro or telephone wires they'll sit up there, same flycatcher behavior. They'll see an insect, swoop out, grab it, and come back to a perch with it. That's what this one's done. He's got an insect in his beak. Let's see another one here. Yeah, that's a very typical flycatcher posture. Very, very erect body. They don't wag their tails, but they've got a heavier flycatcher beak than the phoebe does. Kingbirds are a fairly large flycatcher within the family, at least the ones that we have. Um, Black on top or very, very dark charcoal, nearly black, um, white on the undersides, and quite a distinctive field mark is the white band on the end of the tail. So when you see them sitting on a fence wire or on a twig like this, you'll be able to see that white tip. And this is the vocalization. It's more distinctive than it sounds. Here's another one. Let's try this one. Yeah. Very twittery. These also like water, often nest near water. They nest in trees, not necessarily high, but they like to be up and they love nesting on trees over water, especially on little islands and things. The water provides a bit more protection. I wonder if they've got a nest picture here. They don't make much of a nest. Do, 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 do. That doesn't look like it. Okay. It's kind of a very shallow nest.
And they're usually hard to see unless you're in the boat.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that
even
helps.
that they're quite hidden. Yeah.
Yeah, they do put them in fairly thick cover amongst a lot of twigs and things. So common, easy to find. Listen for the call because they vocalize even when they're kind of tucked up in a tree. Here's one everybody probably knows. Blue jay. That's the common call. I don't know how it's been for most of you. We haven't had very many blue jays this winter. In fact, just one or two most of the winter on our property. There's more now. They're sort of coming back for the spring. There just wasn't much food here after that drought last year. And they won't stick around just for the feeder necessarily. I want to get, they actually have quite a range of calls. That's a pretty typical one. Ah, yeah, that's one you often hear in the fall. Can't hear that one very well. Yeah, that one's pretty quiet. See if they will. Yeah. So again, that's the common one. So blue jays are common. They're quite comfortable in residential areas as long as there's trees. They nest in trees and they like to be up well off the ground, not super high, but 15 to 30 feet or so. So they need fairly, they want a decent sized tree. But they'll also live in woodlands. I imagine most of you know how to identify a blue jay, at least by sight, if not by call. This is one people may not be quite as familiar with. Let's try a different one. Yeah. So that's a house wren. House wrens are quite common around Ottawa. They like, I guess I would describe it as sort of a savanna habitat. They like shrubs, but they also like some tall trees. Shirley's Bay is a really good place to hear and see house wrens. I don't get to Britannia as much as I used to. Janet, you'd know, are there still house wrens at Britannia? She's probably muted
Yes.
herself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
there are. They're
yeah,
around, and yeah.
yeah. So but they'll be right in residential areas if there's trees with holes or nest boxes. They can use a nest box with a fairly small hole, which excludes house sparrows and things that can be a competitor for nest holes. Although house wrens are actually pretty feisty, so they're more of a problem. In fact, the males, if there's multiple nest holes in a small area, a male that has that territory will stuff the ones he's not using up with sticks to keep other birds from using them. So they're quite territorial and quite pugnacious little birds in spite of their small size. Let's play the song again. I find it's got a raspy and a raspy, yeah, raspy and gurgly note in the same song. But
Can you
very
play one of
distinct.
the rattle calls, Ken?
I'll see if they got one here. Yeah, I'm just run through these. They seem to mostly have the song. I'm just quickly reviewing through here. Yeah, they do have some alarm calls that what's this? Yeah. So that's an alarm call. Is that the one you meant, Janet?
Yep, that's good. Because I mean, the family of wrens all have that kind of rough, chattery kind of
Yeah,
thing
they
going
they
on.
all have quite they have alarm calls. They'll definitely they'll challenge even people if they're coming into their territory and be warning other birds that you're there. Small birds, if you don't know house wren, smaller than a chickadee or maybe about the same size. I'd say probably a little smaller. Just brown. Sometimes they have the tail cocked up at an angle. Don't know if they got one here like that. House wren doesn't do that. Oh, there's one. Yeah. Um, I've got winter wren on another night. They're definitely a forest bird, so I haven't got them on tonight. The song is completely unique, pretty much, but the birds look something alike. The winter wren is darker and has a shorter tail and more of a white eyebrow. Here's another one everybody should know. So, American robin. Um, they nest in every acre in the whole city of Ottawa, probably, except maybe right downtown. But as long as there's some trees or a windowsill or something they can nest on, you've probably got breeding robins. The song is distinctive, fairly distinctive. As we work through the next few weeks, I will draw your attention to some species that could be confused with the robin. But learn the robin well because cheer up, cheer up, cheer up. Yeah. They have some distinctive calls too. That one I'm not as familiar with. Yeah, that's the alarm call. That pip 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 pip. Let's do it again. And that call is just as distinctive as the song, really. Your image there. Again, some alarm calls. Yeah, those sort of squeaky alarm calls, also very typical. So, as I say, most people probably know Robins pretty well, probably know the song. Um, they should be back within the month. I usually think of Robins coming back about the middle of March. I'm not sure that'll happen this March, although it's supposed to get quite warm in the next week, so the snow may melt enough. There's always some robins wintering now, although we haven't had any wintering on our property this year. So I haven't had one on our property since the new year. But if you're in an area where there's buckthorn bushes with berries on them and things like that, you'll probably have robins wintering. When I was a boy, they didn't winter hardly at all. It was quite rare to see wintering robins in the parts of southern Ontario where I lived. But about the middle of March, they often come back. They are somewhat weather dependent. Something to keep in mind if you're talking about migratory birds. The birds that leave North America, like all the little warblers and scarlet tanagers and things like that, They are not weather dependent. They come back based on day length. They're flying up from Brazil or Costa Rica or something. They have no idea what the weather's like in North America. So they won't come back early because we have an early spring. They come back on a time based on day length. Uh, but something like the robins only go into the United States. The southern U.S. is where most of them breed, most of them winter. So they do know what the weather is like in North America. And if there's an early spring, they'll come back earlier. I've seen migrants as early as the end of February. And some years it's almost April before you see them back in numbers. So they can. Phoebe is another one. Just goes to the southern states. They'll come back earlier or later depending on the weather. They will even come back when there's hardly any insects yet. They're quite hardy for a flycatcher. But the robins can be quite hardy as long as they can find some berries or something when they first come back. They'll do all right. Of course, they're a lot happier once there's worms they can get out of the ground. Something you'll notice with a lot of species, including robins, is the males come back first. With red-winged blackbirds, there can be 2 or 3 weeks between the males coming back in early March and the females coming back in early April or late March. The males have to get a territory, so the older birds that had a territory last year, they want to get back, get their territory, and get set up for when their mate comes back or the females start coming back. So the males are often in more of a hurry than the females to get back. I haven't had a lot of questions. What if we take a break for a few questions here, just to let people catch up?
Sure, I'll put up your hand in the chat there, and
Yeah.
I'll unmute you for that.
Samvath has a question. So,
Okay.
yeah, Samvath, what's your
I
question?
saw another strange bird. It was full of white and smaller than a gull. I have a drawing.
Oh yeah. Can you save that one for the end, Samvath? But just while we're going through the presentation, let's just stick to the birds we're talking about. And we should have some time at the end for some
Yeah,
other questions, okay?
I don't think my video is working anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, you can show it to us another week. Yeah, so the robins, the males come back first. This is a male, has quite a black head. I'll see if they've got a female here. They just say adult. Oh, well, that could be a female. Females have a grayer head or more of a brown head. Oh, that's an interesting picture.
The man stayed calm as Vega moved his hand for his weapon.
I'm getting somebody's radio or something is coming through.
Decorated police officer whose federal lawsuit.
That seems to have fixed it. Here's a robin eating sumac berries. Sumac berries aren't a great food source, especially in the winter. They're kind of dry. But when the robins and bluebirds and things first come back in the early spring and there aren't enough insects and worms yet, they will come and eat the sumac berries. Just an interesting factoid. Okay, let's move on. We're getting through these fairly complex. Okay, another bird everybody probably knows, European starling. You'll notice the songs all have a similar quality. Just be aware that starlings can mimic many other birds, but they won't stick to one, like mockingbirds, which you've probably heard of. They will repeat the call of another species many times. Starlings tend to just run up, they'll run a bunch of different songs of other birds together with some squeaks and whistles and things. Here, we'll bring up another one. That's a pretty good one. They can do a lot of, I've heard them do a pretty good whippoorwill. Um, they can do a bit of a cardinal, just about anything.
I have ones on my high tension wires
Yep.
that do a dead ringer for meadowlarks.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've heard them do meadowlark. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anything that's especially sort of whistly songs. Just gonna see if I can get some calls. Yeah, there's a call. Yeah, that's an alarm call. Not the one you usually hear. Yeah, that's pretty common. Yeah, that's a big flock. They can make a lot of noise when there's a large flock of them. Yeah, that's sort of a chirr is pretty common. Um, just a little, I say little blackbird. They're smaller than a robin, quite chunky, short tail, as you can see in this one, and a fairly long yellow beak in the summer plumage. The beak isn't as yellow in the winter.
Ken, Carol
Yeah,
Shepherd has a question. Why do they imitate other birds?
that's a good question. I don't know actually. Uh, there's several birds that do it. Mockingbird, as I say, is another one. Um, yeah, I've actually never heard an explanation. Maybe just because they can. Some birds just are very versatile in the sounds they can make. And, like parrots that can imitate the human voice. So they take advantage of that by picking up. Now, it's possible that a more varied song is more attractive to females. Um, but I have never read anything to say that, whether there's been a study done on that. Um, I think we can. Starlings are quite quite definitely associated with human modified environments. They nest in holes, but a hole can mean almost anything. A hollow fence post, a tree hole, a bird box, um, a stove vent in your wall, um, electrical. Oh, something they really use a lot is the light standards along roadways in Ottawa. Just about every light standard in Ottawa that's got one of those holes near the top of it for the wiring to go into, they'll use those to nest in.
Yeah, they're also very voracious seed eaters. So if you have your feeders full and you got the starlings swooping in on them, your seed will get drained very quickly.
Yeah, we don't get them at our feeder, but we're out in the bush, so we do get starlings occasionally. They will nest in more wooded areas. I don't think they're as common in wooded areas as they used to be. They're becoming more of um, a town bird, probably. But um, I remember many years ago being quite surprised to have a pair nesting in a woodpecker hole on an island in a lake in the interior of Algonquin Park. I don't know if that's very likely now. That was almost, that's over 50 years ago. So
Yeah, and I know we're not talking as much about how they look, but their look can change a lot during the season based on the wear of their
yes.
feathers.
So this one's still got some of his winter plumage with these speckles. Um, there's one in summer, very bright yellow bill and no speckles. They don't have a molt in the spring. This is actually fairly common in songbirds. They don't molt, but they change appearance. So let's get see if they got a nice speckly one here. That's more of a summer one. No, it's breeding. So, yeah, there's one in the breeding plumage, almost plain black. Non-breeding. There we go. Okay, here's non-breeding. all those speckles. To get from this to that all black one, like that, doesn't require a molt. These, over the late winter and into spring, all those brown feather tips wear off. Pale feathers wear more quickly than dark feathers. That's why gulls and many other flying birds have dark wingtips. The melanin content makes the feathers stronger. So the ones that where they experience the most wear at the tips, they're black so that they last longer. But
They had
these,
a
sorry,
Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead. They had a question on the chat about, are they the ones that you see in the big swarms? So
yes,
one of
yes.
the things is that during migration, starting in about mid-July, I would say, yeah, they start gathering together. And there's lots of different blackbirds that will flock together and fly that
Yeah,
way.
and they will join big flocks of redwings or grackles and things sometimes. If you go online and do a search on starling murmuration, they call it a murmuration. They're usually really huge flocks or somewhere in Europe where the birds are native. They're introduced here. And it's pretty amazing. Like they'll get flocks of millions of birds. And it's like watching a school of fish. They swirl around. And even here, you'll see them go form quite tight balls. Um, Sometimes that usually means they're being harassed by a predator like a merlin or a sharp-shinned hawk. If you see that, if you see the starlings ball up into a tight flock, it's always worth looking for a predator. Another bird that changes color by just feather wear is snow buntings. In the winter, they're quite brown. In breeding plumage, they're very black and white. They just lose the brown off the feather tips over the course of the winter. Okay, another dooryard species, but not confined there. This is chipping sparrow, named for the song, although the call is also a chip. Let's see here. That high pitched tip. See if we got another one here. It's a bit clearer. Actually, I don't remember hearing that one. That's a chip. Not as sharp as they can be, though. Song again. There's a lot of variation in song. It's always a long trill like this, but it isn't always that musical.
But yeah, usually flat and even, eh?
Yeah, yeah, very level. There's a drier one. I should tone that one down a little, see if that improves it. Yeah, so that's quite a dry one, but it's always very level. It doesn't slow down and speed up. It's just a level trill. These will nest. They don't like dark forest. They're an edge species or a yard species. They'll nest in shrubs. They don't need much. A little yew tree or a little spruce in your front yard is all they need. I wonder if they've got a nest. Let's just look.
And in the spring, you'll have difficulty telling them apart from the juncos and the pine warblers that move in. So that would be a good quiz at the end, Ken.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll try when I get to the pine warblers. And I don't know if I'm covering junco because it's more of a migrant here. I've stuck mostly for this 5 weeks. I've stuck mostly to breeding birds because they're the ones that you'll hear singing the most. So here's a chipping sparrow nest, very small. You'll see the person's hand there. The whole nest is only about three or 3.5 inches across. Usually has a lot of fine rootlets and hair. In the old days, they used a lot of horsehair. You probably don't get as much hair in them now as they used to. Beautiful little blue eggs with markings at the fat end. Let's go back to the bird. So small sparrow. I mean, sparrows are mostly small, but this is one of the smaller ones. Um, Smaller than a chickadee, I would say, or at least maybe roughly the same size as a chickadee. Different shape, sort of compact, shorter tail than a chickadee, and streaky on top. And oops, I didn't mean to do that. There we go. Um, two two thin wing bars on the brown wings, and then the head is the best mark. They're quite gray on the head and undersides, very smooth gray, no streaking on the underside, like a lot of our sparrows have. And they've got a red cap, which some others have. Tree sparrows have that, but they're a winter bird. Um, but the chipping sparrows, on top of the red cap, they also have a white eyebrow and a black line through the eye. Typical sparrow bill, seed cracking bill, fairly thick at the base. Um, they'll come and pick up sunflower seeds off the ground. They'll eat small seeds, millet seeds and things. Another sparrow. There's calls there too. So this is Savannah sparrow. Quite a common field sparrow, but they're in grasslands. So pastures where the grass is allowed to grow a little longer, along roadsides where there's grass, quite common along fence lines and things. They'll often pop up onto a fence to sing. They'll also sing just a stem of a weed or something. They make quite hard to pick out because they're fairly small, and when you see them off in the distance, there's nothing flashy about them. They're a streaky little sparrow. Look a little bit like a song sparrow, but they're smaller and finer streaking on the underside. The best mark is this yellow spot just in front of the eye. If you see a streaky sparrow with a yellow spot in front of the eye in a grassy area, it's a Savannah sparrow. Let's listen to another song or two. Let's try another one. There's alarm calls. They're not very distinctive, except by habitat. So definitely a grassland species. Very common if you're in the right habitat. Probably one of the commonest little grassland birds that's still left. A lot of birds that used to nest in hay fields and things aren't doing very well. When I was a boy, we cut one cut of hay off of a hay field, and it would usually be in late June. Now we usually try to get 3 or 4 cuts off our hay fields, and the first one is early in June, and it's too early. The bobolinks and sparrows and things, meadowlarks, their nests get destroyed by the mowing operation before their young can escape. Here's one everybody probably knows. Northern cardinal. If you have a feeder in your backyard in Ottawa, you probably see these. We even get them occasionally at our place. One thing I've noticed, we didn't used to have cardinals very often, sometimes in the winter at our feeder. But over the last 5 years, most of our ash trees have died because of emerald ash borer. So that's opened up the habitat along the ravine and that. And so now there's a lot more brushy plant, a lot more shrubs and that are coming up under the dead ashes. And so I think we have breeding cardinals now. We hear them singing now in the spring. Very distinctive bird, long tail, fairly long tail, uh, bright red with a crest and a black face and an orange. Definitely a seed cracking bill. As you can see, it's almost like a parrot.
So the female is
Yeah,
got
fine.
a wash of red,
Yeah.
but they're mostly brown, but their bill is red.
Yes.
The-
So they have the bright orange cardinal beak, but the body in that is more of a tan gray, but they still have a little bit of red in the flight feathers and on the crest. You can just see a shadow of the black face, but the shape is the same. So you um, let's do a few songs. That's a very typical one, loud whistles. Just be aware that you can get birds like that that have a two-syllable note in their song. So some are single, some are two-syllabled, and some are faster, some are slower. There's a lot of variation. Here's a call. Loud chip, um, fairly distinctive. Um, the only thing I sometimes get it confused with is the call note of a dark-eyed junco, but it's louder and snappier. But I sometimes have to think a bit when I hear cardinal because we have more juncos here than cardinals most of the winter.
And late in the summer, if you see one that looks like a female, but has a black or very dark gray bill, that'll be a juvenile.
Let's see if they have a juvenile here. I don't know. Oh, here's one apparently. Yeah, well, that's a very young one.
Mm.
Yeah. So this one's just fresh out of the nest, the fledgling, really. You can tell it's a fledgling, well, partly because it's still getting the feathers on its face, but nestling birds have these bright light edges on their beaks. And most songbird nestlings have that. It's to trigger a feeding response from the parents. They had a nest here too, I think. Yeah, nothing. It's just a little grassy nest with speckled eggs, usually in pretty thick cover. I've only found very few cardinal nests in my lifetime, just because they're usually in really good cover, thick brambles or a cedar hedge or something. Cardinals like cedar hedges because they like thick cover near the ground because they nest low down, usually just 3 or 4 feet off the ground. I'm just going to see what other calls they've got here. Yeah. So you get some different sounding ones, but just listen for those loud, regular whistles. They can speed up and slow down. Sometimes they'll start out with a slow run and then speed it up, sort of. Probably can't hear that, but I bet you Zoom filtered that. Okay, cardinal, everybody probably knows. Here's a couple of grassland species coming up. Bobolink, another one that's named for its song, for part of the song anyway. French also name it for the song, Le Goglu. Yeah. Um, this is a male, um, absolutely distinctive in breeding plumage, which is how we usually see them until late summer. Um, sort of a buffy area on the back. That color's a bit off. I'm gonna see if I can get a better. No, that's a female. Females look very much like a sparrow, a little bit larger than a sparrow, but the bobolinks also have a seed cracking bill because they eat a lot of seeds, especially in the winter. They can be quite a pest in rice fields when they're in migration or on the wintering grounds. Yeah, here's a better male. So a nice buffy patch on the back of the head, and then these bright white areas on the back and rump. And the kind of spiky ends on the tail feathers, as you can see here. The underside is all black, and that's kind of the opposite to most birds. Most small birds have what they call counter shading. So the under parts will be pale and the upper parts will be dark. So when the under parts are shaded, because they're on the underside, it means the whole bird looks almost the same color all over to the observer. And so that makes them much less conspicuous. Obviously, the bobolinks have developed this color to be conspicuous. Um, they're there to advertise. And I don't know whether they have a winter one here. Possibly not. The winter ones look a lot like a female, even the males. Yeah, lots of breeding males. We only see the winter birds or the immatures in that for a brief period in late summer before they start flying south. Let's listen to a few more songs. Pretty little song. See if I can find a call. Surely they've got a call here somewhere. Come on. Off the call. It's supposed to be a call. Oh, there's a Savannah sparrow singing in there. There's probably some calls in there. I'm having a hard time picking them out. They have kind of a chink call. It's quite distinctive. We have all forest at our place, so they don't come down on our property. But when migration, I sometimes hear them flying over by the call.
Farmers, there's actually a program that some farmers are paid not to cut their hay until after the bobolinks have fledged.
Yeah. Grasslands Ontario has several properties out near DeWitt's Corners beyond Perth. Some of us from the MVFN, the Mississippi Valley Field Naturalists, we actually do surveys for them in the summer to keep track of whether it's working or not. There's some properties that are fantastic. Like there's one field that we go to. It's a big field. It's probably 10 or 15 acres, but there are probably 20 or more bobolinks nesting in that area, in that one field. 20 pairs, at least. I just forget our numbers now, but so that's in some cases it's working really well. So these people have horses, so they don't need as much hay. They aren't raising cattle and stuff. So they agree not to cut their hay until at least, I think it's mid-July sometime. So by then the young birds can fly well enough to get out of the way of the mowers. And it's working quite well. They need grasslands. These birds will not nest in your backyard. They have to have a fairly extensive area of grass to nest in.
Yeah, there's on Carling at Rifle Road, both north and south of Carling at Rifle Road. There's
Okay.
a couple of fields, and the bobolinks are usually there
Yeah.
as well. So that's not far from people.
Yeah, any field that isn't cut too soon, you can, especially if it's a fairly large field, you can find them. And they're often out along the roadsides. But if you know the song, you can tell if they're there. I'll play it one more time before we move on. And bobolinks are actually in the blackbird family. And so is this next species.
And also, bobolinks can be found at Claybank Park if you're in Ardenprior.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's several places around here I know where they are. The ninth concession of Pakenham going up into the back of Pakenham Mountain. There's usually a few pairs there and a few of these. This is Eastern Meadowlark. When I was a boy, this was one of the songs of spring. Every hayfield had meadowlarks because they could get a nest off before the hay was cut. They've really taken a beating. You kind of have to find somewhere where the fields are let go a bit now. So you actually find bobolinks and meadowlarks more as you get up onto the Canadian Shield in Lanark County, where the agriculture isn't as intensive, and there's still some large areas of grass.
And for those people that don't know, there's actually a western meadowlark out on Panmure Road.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he's still there. I'm still seeing
Yep.
reports. Yeah.
People are bringing seed for him. So
Oh, are they? Okay.
yeah.
I haven't been there yet, but they're quite hard to tell apart when you're looking at them. But the songs are quite different. So anyway, here's a song. Whoops. Clear whistles. They start singing quite early in the spring, late March, early April. The bobolinks don't come back till early May usually. Let's get some calls. Yeah, that little call is really distinctive. They also have a kind of a twitter. Looking to see if no, it's the same one. They can run those together and make kind of a rattle that's pretty distinctive when they're startled. They don't seem to have one of those here. There's nothing you can confuse them with. They're also in the blackbird family, as you can tell by the beak, but they have quite a long beak with a sharp point. A lot of the blackbirds feed by sticking their beak into the soil and then opening it to access invertebrates in the soil, and the starlings will do that too, and they have rather a similar beak, a long pointed beak like this. Brown on the back, bright yellow on the undersides with this black V or a black shield on the upper chest, and in flight they have bright white wingtips. Bright tail edges. I'll see if they've got one in flight here. Oops, that's a nest. I've never found a meadowlark nest. You can see the white edges here in this perched bird. I used to try to find them when I was a boy. I never found a meadowlark nest and I never found a bobolink nest. Very well hidden down in the ground, and they usually have some grass domed over it, so you don't see the eggs from the above. Yeah, they don't seem to have the one in flight. So pretty distinctive, all streaky, um, fairly short tail. Actually, in flight, they're shaped a bit like a starling. So, last one for tonight. Now, if you were birding in Ottawa back before about 1980, you would not have seen this bird in the Ottawa area. This is the house finch. They were introduced into eastern North America back during the 1940s, and it took them quite a long time to get up into Canada. But in the early 80s, they started showing up around Ottawa, and of course, now they're quite common. Not as common as they were 25 or 30 years ago. There's a bacterial disease that affects their eyes that's been very hard on them. We have never had a house finch in the woods at our property. This one's actually got two brown-headed cowbird eggs in it. This one and this one. These are house finch eggs, these four. But the brown-headed cowbird, as you probably know, is a brood parasite, so it lays its eggs in other birds' nests. Now let's listen to some songs. As an introduced species, these are pretty dependent on man-modified environments, especially now that they're less common. As I say, we've never had one at our place. You have to go into a suburban area to find them usually. They nest usually in trees. I have seen them nest in hanging baskets on front porches. Not very high up usually. Usually just about eye level or a little higher. Let's get some calls because they're fairly distinctive too. Yeah. So that's house finch call. Calls mixed in there with songs. So this is a female house finch. Very nondescript. Just they got the finch bill for cracking seeds. They're mostly seed eaters. This group, this is the fringillids, the true finches, goldfinches, pine siskins, purple finches, house finches.
Some of their shorter calls. Well, are you frozen?
Why was I saying that now?
Yeah.
Oh, they feed their young regurgitated, crunched up seeds. Many birds, many of our other finches, like our cardinals and rose-breasted grosbeaks, feed their young insects, and in fact themselves eat insects during the summer. But the fringillids eat a lot of insects year-round. That's a female. And there's a male, sort of raspberry red, almost orange sometimes, on the forehead and on the underside, a bit on the back of the head. And then they just become streaks of white and brown. We'll be looking at purple finch another night, and we'll talk about a bit more about the differences then. Okay. Are you ready for a quiz before we close down? Perhaps we should give people a chance to ask questions first.
So I was here, I'll put my video on.
That doesn't matter.
Yeah. I was
Sorry,
just
go ahead.
wondering, do they threaten native species, these
The house
ducks?
finches? Sorry, I've got this silly thing playing, so I'm just gonna shut it up. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, do they threaten? I don't think so because they're restricted to man-modified habitats. So I used to be involved with assessing invasive plant species, and I used to say something, and I would say something the same about these. They they're an introduced species, but they're living in a man-modified, essentially an introduced habitat as well. They aren't they aren't worried, they aren't bothering the purple finches in our forests and things. They aren't taking nest holes. Starlings take nest holes that our native birds could use, like chickadees or bluebirds or whatever. I don't think these are as much of a problem that way. I don't know if purple finches and some of the others can get the bacterial eye disease. Do you happen to know, Janet?
No, I don't know
Yeah,
actually.
I did. I'll try to look that up for another week. So I'm not sure about that. But no, I would say they haven't been as much of a problem as, say, house sparrow or starling. Although house sparrow numbers are a tiny fraction of what they were 60 years ago.
Yeah, and at my feeders, I rarely, I think 1 year out of the 10, 15 I've been here, have I had a house sparrow, but
Okay.
I do always get finches.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we don't get that. We don't get either. I've never had either at our place, but we're right in the woods. So, okay. Was there any other questions? Okay, let's try a quiz then. Um, oh, I'm in a quiz. What do I? I'm somewhat. Some of my screen is hidden here. We don't. Yeah, we just want to play the sound. I have to push a button here, but I can't see it. I think I have to move her. Yeah, Samvath, have you got a question?
Yeah, it was about that bird.
Which bird? Sorry.
Don't exactly have the video, but I can describe it. It was smaller than a gull, full white, and had
Yeah.
thinner wings.
Okay. Just recently?
Yeah, on Thursday.
Okay. Hmm. Yeah, the only gull that's usually around, well, the gulls can still be around. I can't think of anything smaller that would be around. Why isn't
But it wasn't near water. I don't think it was near water.
Here we go. Any ideas what that one is? These are all from tonight.
Your guess is in the chat.
Yeah, there's an idea. Yeah. It's one of the species in the list here, which you can see. I've turned off the pictures because I wanted people to listen to the call. Okay, this is probably one many people haven't heard. That's a savanna sparrow.
Well, Sambath got it right.
Oh, did he? Good.
Mhm.
Yeah, so it tells you if it's correct. So there you can see the little yellow dot in front of the eye. Let's go to another one. Not a super typical one, but it's identifiable.
Do you
One of the
remember
earlier.
I asked Ken about it earlier. If he could play one of those ones that rattles.
Yeah. Don't be shy. There's no, you don't lose points if you make a mistake.
Well, we've got one right answer anyway.
Oh, have we? Good.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a house wren. It's not as chirpy as some of them are. Yeah. I always tell people when they're shy about identifying a bird, I always say, there's only one way to never misidentify a bird, and that's to never try to identify a bird. Um, I misidentify birds more often than I'd like to admit, so don't even worry about it. Nobody cares. Nobody's going to be upset. So let's see if we're right. Yeah. So good for you, Semba. Let's try another. This should be an easy one, easier.
Yeah,
Did any-
everybody's got it right.
Oh, they have. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting for people to say. I can't. I haven't got my
Yes,
chat open.
I can't see the chat until it stops playing.
Okay.
For some reason, I don't know.
Anyway, yeah. So that was a chipping sparrow. That was one of the more recent ones we listened to. So we got some answers?
Yeah, it's coming in, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's bobolink. Oh, there's the call that I couldn't find. There's a song. Clear whistles. Think grassland. So we have some correct answers there.
Yep, we've got and even Yelka has said eastern meadowlark. Even.
Yeah.
Good one, Yelka.
Yeah, it's in meadowlark. You hear that long twitter? That's quite a common flight call. I couldn't find that one to play, but they do have it here. Everybody will know this one, I imagine.
The namesayer.
Yeah, that's right. That's one of the ones that tells you its name. That's killdeer.
See, I can't see the.
This one here is in this picture is doing the famous broken wing act, the distraction display. They'll creep along the ground, fluttering their wings and fanning their tails to try to distract you from a nest or young. Any ideas on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got a couple of house finches, some starlings.
Yeah, actually, I was a little confused with that one. I think it's a house finch, but
Yeah,
they did have some starling call. Let's see. It'll tell us if we're wrong. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was a little whistlier. It just made me think of starling a bit.
And when you hear that zree at the end of
Yeah,
it, that's
that call, that tells you, yeah. This is one of the earlier ones from tonight. This is one you mostly have in town.
Nope, not starling. Yep. Peter's got it.
There's a flock of them. That's chimney swift. Yeah. So that they wasn't as clear because there were many of them calling there.
Yeah, so I was surprised to learn that while they roost together in chimneys, that when they actually nest, they don't nest all together. They nest separately.
Oh, is that true? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I just recently read.
Yeah, I've never actually seen a nest in situ. I've seen them in displays and that where people had saved them, but
Mhm.
I used to see
So,
them going into chimneys as a boy. But
yeah.
let's
So
play
the
this.
old Dominican college downtown or in near Chinatown has a nice big chimney, and you can
Okay,
can see them coming into roost
yeah.
just as it gets dark.
So after breeding season is over, you'll see large flocks going
Yeah.
into one large chimney sometime. Okay, let's play this one again.
Yeah. Gabrielle, Heather, Pierre, they've
Two
all got
different
it.
calls there. Oh, flicker in the background. Blue jay?
Yeah. So near my daughter's property, it was winter, snow on the ground, and I heard a red-shouldered hawk calling.
Mhm.
Perfect red-shouldered hawk. The only one problem with that is that there are no red-shouldered hawk around in the middle of winter. So I looked over at one of the neighbors' house, and of course there was his feeder with all the blue jays.
Yeah, they can do a really good red-shouldered hawk. They can do a not bad red tail as well. But they're really good at red shoulder. Um, uh, yeah, we have both here. Red shoulders nest on our property most summers. So I do get, so I think I can tell them apart, but I have been fooled. Yeah. So that was a blue jay. Oops. I must have it must have gone on to something else while I was talking. Go back to quiz species. Oh, okay. Yeah, definitely. So
Yeah.
that one's saying its name. That's Phoebe. Starling in the background, but what's in front there?
Yeah. Morning dove, people are
Yeah.
recognizing.
Okay. Oh, yeah, this is one we haven't had in the quiz yet. It's a very brief call. Did somebody get it?
Yeah. Kingbird.
Yeah, Eastern Kingbird.
Yeah.
But usually they do more of a twittery thing. That's just a very brief burst of song, but if you got it right, that well done. Oh, there's one sitting on a nest. Um, okay. Well, I think all the species have shown up in the quiz now that we did tonight. Kingbird was the last. Um, so it's 8:30, so we should probably wrap it up. Are there any last questions?
No, thank you. Lots of thank yous.
Okay. Well, you're very welcome. It'll get a bit more challenging as we go on. Um, next week, we're going to be looking at some birds of more open areas, but not fields, more old fields and shrubs and hedgerows, and then also some forest birds. We're going to be doing a forest birds for several nights, but a bit of a mix next week. We're going to be doing bluebird next week, for example, crow and raven, scarlet tanager.
Okay.
So,
Well,
well,
thank you,
thanks for your attention, everybody.
Yep. thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. And, if you have questions again next week, we'll, we can answer them then.
And if anybody has suggestions for making it of presenting things in a clearer way or a better way, I'm open to that. So just feel free.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. Oh, you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yeah.
So I know these are limited to 100 participants, and I'm just looking at the number of people who are online, and I've signed up for, I think I managed to get signed up for 2 of the events, and I know they're being recorded and be online. So obviously, if I can't, obviously I didn't manage to get signed up for the last 2. But I'm just curious about, because they're closed now, obviously, because I guess you've met your 100 signups. So I assume that means you've met your 100 signups.
I'm assuming Janet and I haven't really had anything to do with the registration, so that was the club set the limits, and
Yeah. So we have asked that people, if they find out that they are not able to come, that they please there's on the invitation that comes to people, there is a place where you can click and say, I can't make it. So I'll talk to Jess and see if what we can do for that for next time, to make sure that people who weren't able to get in on the first one can get in.
Yeah, I was just curious because of seeing the numbers, and I mean, I can understand not everybody can come. That's absolutely fair. Just double checking. I totally understand the 100, because I know myself, I've got a Zoom account, and 100 is usually the Zoom limit before you start getting into money, major money. So cool. Just wanted to check in.
Yeah, I'll check in with Jess and see.
it will be recorded.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for doing this. I really appreciate it, because I must admit the bird song is one thing I really need to learn.
It's amazing. Like it's this time of year when there's no leaves on the trees. It's not as important, but once the leaves are out, like I probably do 90% of my bird identifications by sound. Like when I was doing the atlasing, like that's how you find a lot of your species. So
that's my little pie chart last week.
Oh yeah, that's right. You did have a pie chart. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I want to stop relying on Merlin. So
but don't forget, use Merlin as a tool. So if Merlin is hearing a bird and you haven't heard it, listen again and say, "Oh, yes, that is," or whatever, or go and look for it from where the sound comes from. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. I never use it as a confirmation. I use it as it should be something I'm looking for now.
And that's fun. Yeah, that's.
And keep your eye. The bird committee will be putting out some information about. We'll be organizing some walks for the spring as well. So make sure to get in on them. Get in early.
I've already signed up for one of the Eastern walks. I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you guys. Thank you guys very much for putting those on as well.
Okay.
Great. Thanks very much.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Yep.
That it for tonight?
I think so. So
okay.
Thanks
very much, for hosting, everybody. Janet.
No worries. Well, yeah, it was worrisome, but
well, you did great.
Okay. All right. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.